Welcome to Spanish Janice. I'm Janice Burt, and today we're diving into conversations that inspire growth, connection, and confidence. You're watching Now Media Television. Welcome, everybody, to Spanish Janice, where we have these honest, heart-forward conversations about life, leadership, wellness, and most important of all, becoming the best versions of ourselves. I am your host, Janice Burt. And today's conversation is going to be amazing because joining me is Jamie Hess, TEDx and keynote speaker, lifestyle expert, media personality, and the host of the Gratitudology podcast. I hope I said that right, Jamie. She spent nearly 2 decades as a senior PR and marketing leader, working with major global brands before stepping into entrepreneurship and personal brand education through her Brand Ninja program. Jamie, thank you so much for being here to just impart your knowledge to us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start. We had a little bit of a conversation offline. And I met Jamie in the professional speaking space. And you had mentioned to me, Jamie, that you are working on something that you are excited about, that you wake up thinking about, and you're diving into your next keynote for 2026. So tell us, what has you so excited?
The power of which is reinvention, reengineering, reimagining, reframing our life. And Janice, I am so excited. Have you ever put together a refresh on your body of work that just made you feel like, oh my God, I got it? I just feel personally like I have loved the topics I've spoken about on stage historically very deeply. I spoke about the power of gratitudology, which is a word that I trademarked. It is the name of my podcast. And I have a deep belief that an attitude of gratitude is the heartbeat of happiness. I gained this from my own experience coming through recovery from drugs and alcohol. I believe that those who have been to the darkest places see the light that much brighter. So that was very near and dear to my heart. I also had a topic called Your Magnetic Rebrand, where I helped people rebrand from the inside out. And both of those were great. But if I'm being honest, you and I speak to all sorts of audiences, including, audiences of corporate professionals and leaders. And none of my topics ever felt like, wow, this is what keeps leaders up at night. It's not like leaders wake up in the morning thinking, man, I wish my workforce was more grateful. Like, it's a long way around to convince them that you need that as a fundamental to re-engage your workforce. But the power of reinvention, the reminder to everybody that when you help people reinvent from the inside out, fundamentally, and it's not like one big overhaul, it's these daily reframes and habits, that you have a better workforce, you have a happier team of people, we are happier in our bodies. And my gift on this planet is to help people do that one step at a time.
That is so powerful because walk me through it again. It's reinvention,
So it's the power of Janice. And why I say that is that ultimately reinvention is what is at the root of this. Now, for some people, that sounds scary. It feels like, well, I don't know that I need to reinvent everything. I just want to make some small tweaks. And yeah, I get it. But do I really believe that most people at their core actually want to reinvent themselves in their life? I actually do. I think that in today's modern Western world, if you ask 99% of people, or if you ask everybody, 99% of those people will give you an answer, which is, yeah, on some level, they are dissatisfied. They don't wake up feeling like, yeah, I've got it. I'm connected to my passion and purpose. I'm killing it. Most people are living in a state of anxiety at some level. And we're very quick to blame it on the externals. Well, I mean, with the state of the world, what it is, or we want to fix it by changing an external. Well, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get the new job, leave the job. I'll be happy when I get the husband. I'll be happy when I leave the husband, right? whatever it is, it's something outside of ourselves. And I think we all know, it's just hard to admit, but we all know that really it's an inside job. The call is coming from inside the house. And if we can figure out those small daily tweaks to reinvent ourselves from the inside out, to change how we show up and the tools we show up with, that's the name of the game, my friend.
Can you give us a little sneak peek? And if you can't, that's okay. But do you have a little sneak peek for what are one or two of those things that we can do in the morning to help with that process?
Here's the thing, for busy people, and we're all very busy, I want people to understand that the shift is moving from intensity to consistency. I think reinvention can feel very overwhelming. And it's like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, right? Or I'm going to make a 30-day plan that I start on Monday. It's that old adage, right? Like that we used to do with diet culture. I'm going to start it on Monday and then it never starts because it's overwhelming. It's about moving into consistency. And if we're looking for a couple of small shifts that we can do every day, I believe to my core, the fastest way to change your life is by changing how you talk to yourself. I'm a huge believer in affirmations because they work. They are a quick, achievable, powerful way to change what you believe about yourself. When you change your intentional thought each morning and you repeat it daily, you start to reconnect with yourself and your values and your direction. And that is real wellness, by the way. People ask me all the time because I started as a wellness expert, a wellness entrepreneur. They want to know, like, what are my simple tips for wellness? I can talk about fitness or nutrition or hydration. I can get in the weeds with that, but real wellness, it can be as simple as starting the day with one sentence. I'm grounded, capable, and allowed to go at my own pace today. It takes 10 seconds, but when done daily, this changes how you move through your day. It's how you talk to yourself.
Absolutely. And one of mine, because I did this a few years ago, because truly I used to see myself more as like the drowned rat. And as far as talking to ourselves, I had like the worst soundtrack in my head. And so when I went through this whole I am statement, which is kind of what you're talking about with the affirmations, it was like, I am a confident, powerful, and purposeful woman. And just saying that over and over and looking at myself in the mirror and saying this, there is a shift that happens. So I think that's an amazing tool that people can use, as well as let's talk a little bit about the gratitude concept. How has that really helped you in your life with these micro shifts and becoming the best Jamie possible?
So you have to understand when I went into recovery. So I am an addict in recovery. I've been in the recovery world over 20 years, and addiction damn near killed me in my teens and 20s. So I just want to start with that little mic drop moment. I love when people say, "Oh my God, I would never know." It's like that shows how much I've shifted because you would have known, or you might not have known. I was a pretty high performing addict, but if you really knew me and you knew who I was, which was, was just a scared, a scared young woman, it was a very tough time for me. When I got sober, and here's the coolest thing about recovery: addiction is pretty much the only disease that I can think of where the solution, the recovery, the treatment actually leaves you better than you were when you started. In other words, if you have cancer and then you have chemo, the end result is that you no longer have cancer. But when you have addiction and then you go through the recovery process, particularly 12-step recovery or the framework that we have to do to get better, you actually come out better on the other side with a blueprint for living that you didn't have when you went in. So I am so grateful to my addiction. I had what I call the gift of desperation. I changed and evolved my life because I had to. And, growth begins the moment you decide you are no longer available for that old version of yourself. And I had to do that. I mean, it was literally like life or death. So lucky me. What it forced me to do was to open my mind to understand an entire new concept of what it meant to live. And gratitude for me was something I learned from my sponsor. I'll give you a simple little, very basic understanding, which was I used to have a really tough dynamic with my dad, right? As many of us do, especially in our teens and 20s. And I would get off the phone with him all the time. And it would always end with like hanging up on each other or throwing the phone across the room, very frustrated, very dramatic. And my sponsor would say to me, well, let me ask you a question, Jamie. Does he say I love you? Well, yeah, he does. He's a really loving guy. We just kind of butt heads. Okay, cool. Yeah. And safe to say he's alive? Well, yeah, he's alive. And like he's shown up for you your whole life? Well, yeah. Do you know how many people would just kill to have a father who is here on this planet, who says I love you, who Janice, that had never occurred to me. Like that was news to me that I wasn't the victim necessarily, and that also there was so much to be grateful for in this relationship with my dad. That type of a reframe was something that I got by going through this recovery process where I learned this whole new way of being. I took all of that I got in learning how to get connected with an attitude of gratitude, and I brought that into the workforce. And when I brought my recovery, the elements of my recovery into my job, I started falling up. I literally started getting promoted despite myself, like by accident, because I was showing up as a new version of me with integrity, with a gratitude attitude. I wasn't acting like the victim. I was proactively seeing where I could be a helper, where I could be a cog in the wheel, where I could be, a positive force. And because of that, because I accidentally started showing up as a higher aligned version of myself, it started to affect me as a professional. And so that's how I have reframed this all into a professional framework. I took everything I learned in saving my life in recovery and I made it into how I now help professionals be the best version of themselves.
Oh, so good, Jamie, and just the mindset shifts that happen. And yes, I mean, I truly believe in business, in our job and our works. Our work. We show up with all of this stuff inside. So to do that personal development work impacts every area of your life, and especially professionally. That's who we are in the workplace. And speaking of that, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, I really want to dive into burnout and how people can prevent, especially the high achievers, getting to that place of feeling just utterly exhausted and emptied. So we will be right back. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more insight, inspiration, and real conversations. This is Spanish Janice on Now Media Television. And we're back. I'm Janice Burt, and you're watching Spanish Janice. Let's keep growing together. Welcome back to Spanish Janice. Do you want more of what you're watching? Then stay connected to Spanish Janice and every Now Media TV favorite, live or on demand, anytime you like. Download the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and unlock nonstop bilingual, awesome, programming in English and Spanish. And if you're on the move, you can also catch the podcast version right from our website at www.nowmedia.tv. From business and news and lifestyle, culture, and beyond, Now Media TV is streaming around the clock. We are ready whenever you are. Welcome back to Spanish Janice. I am here with Jamie Hess, and we are going to be talking about something that plagues so many leaders and people in business, which is burnout. So to start, Jamie, do you have a story of either yourself or someone else that you knew that really suffered a burnout that just emptied them completely, like kind of that rock bottom place?
I mean, Janice, I remember walking hand in hand with my husband. We were still living in New York City at that time. And I remember looking at him and bursting into tears and trying to explain to him, it's so crazy because I feel like I'm on a spiritual high and also hitting rock bottom both at the same time. And I feel like that's relatable. I felt like this numerous times in my life. It's one of the beautiful complexities of life, right? Like I felt like I was achieving all my metrics of success, but also like I was completely depleted. Something felt off. And I think two things can be true. Like you can be doing great. I think it's an indicator inside that you can be doing great, but your larger work isn't done yet, right? Because you can be achieving the things that you think, are the registers of success, but you have so much more you want to do as far as your mission and your purpose. And burnout is just like that never ending feeling that, like, no matter how hard you work, you're never quite getting there. So I think high achieving professionals obviously feel this a lot. And I think that we can tend to ignore the warning signs because we're supposed to be in charge. And if you're anything like me, you were brought up on hustle culture. I think we're probably around the same age, I have to imagine ish. I was brought up in a culture where she who sent the latest email was the winner, right? If I was at the office at 9 p.m., I won, right? And I think now Gen Z seems to have a better handle on that. They're very good at setting boundaries and, work life balance seems to be more prevalent for them. Um, and to be honest, my toxic trait is I still love hustle culture. I will hustle myself right into burnout because I love what I do. And again, that goes back to gratitude. I feel a deep feeling of gratitude. But if you don't protect yourself, you will end up in that place because those of us with really high achieving goals, we do feel like no matter how hard we work, we're never quite getting there. At the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's that old adage where, you can't pour from an empty cup, or what is it? You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can put it on anybody else. Um, and again, this goes back to the power of reinventing the way that you go into your day. How many of us wake up and the first thing that you do when you tumble out of bed is think of the 65 things that are you have to do and that are maybe going to go wrong?
Oh, me.
Right? Like I hear all of your viewers raising their hands. I see them raising their hands. It is about reframing how you start that day because it's energy in, energy out. You wake up in the morning and you think, how do I bolster my energy? How can I set a healthy boundary today to make sure that the energy isn't leaking out at every juncture? I feel like most people are surviving, not thriving. This is what I hear time and time again, as a coach. I'm talking to people all the time and they're like, yeah, I get it. I should be doing the personal development work, but who could do that? I hardly have time to even survive. We're just trying to keep our head above water. If you don't take time to get ahead of that and to table everything else, to not even open the email until you've done the proactive work to bolster your energy, you're going to end up in burnout. And I think that, the stat, I was reading a stat recently about burnout. I think it's like 87, 88% of people say that they're currently experiencing burnout. That's almost everyone. And, I actually shared a stat recently on television. I think it was, my God, it was a crazy statistic. It's about like 45% of millennials and over 50% of Gen Zers said they had left a job due to burnout or a mental health concern. Like they had literally had to quit. They had left a job because they just couldn't hack it. So ultimately, if our drive towards productivity is causing us to have to like throw in the towel altogether, something is wrong. And that's why I believe so strongly in this work. It is about saying nothing else matters until I get myself in the right place.
Well, have you heard of that saying? If you don't make time for your health, you are going to be forced to make time for your sickness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it
Absolutely.
really is true. It's like picking your hard because it is hard sometimes to take care of oneself. There's things that you have to do and maybe some sacrifices that you have to make. But what kind of hard do we want in our own lives? And I'm really curious about this as far as getting quiet with ourselves, sitting in stillness, meditation, that kind of stuff as it relates to curing or helping with burnout. What are your thoughts on those types of things to help us?
I believe small rituals restore energy far better than these like massive overhauls. You don't have to, I think there's at least the leaders that I look up to leaders, especially the famous ones, tend to align themselves with wellness. Like when you look at, I remember Russell Simmons was one of the first CEOs to kind of pioneer and popularize meditation, for instance. Um, he would show whenever they did like a day in the life of him as a CEO, he would show the first thing he did was he went into his, and of course he could afford to have like a meditation room and a whole thing. And you don't have to have an entire space, but the point is taking the time to making the time. How often do we wait until we have the heart attack to pay attention to our health, until we get the divorce to pay attention to the relationship, right? Don't wait until everything crumbles and falls. Um, you know, most leaders don't need a big lifestyle change. They need fewer interruptions. Creating space between request and response can just give your nervous system room to recover. Focus is a boundary. Being really intentional about these things rather than just flailing through your day can be the first step to completely changing your life. So it doesn't have to be like a 16-point plan. It could be as simple as being very intentional about how you implement mindfulness into your life, how you allow energy leaks to interrupt your day, and how you implement focus. And most leaders, a lot of leaders feel like they can't set boundaries, they have to be available to everyone. That the best leaders are not available to everyone. The best leaders are the people who understand that, their attention is a resource. It's a very valuable resource.
What are some techniques or tools that you have found that just help with setting boundaries? Because I that's a big one for me as a recovering people pleaser. And so it's a constant work in progress. What do you use to shore up those energy leaks, as you were saying, and set those boundaries?
It doesn't have to, same as everything I'm saying today, it doesn't have to happen all at once. Making a boundary promise to yourself at the beginning of the day, like promise yourself one protected boundary today. Maybe it's not even about other people. It's shutting your laptop at a set time and not answering every message immediately. That's how energy begins to return. Maybe the boundary is I am not going to immediately make somebody else's 911 emergency, my mishigas. That's a Yiddish word that we have for craziness. It doesn't have to be my craziness. If I wake up and my plan is to get my workout in, but I get that crazy email from the client, the plan remains that the workout is the priority. It's about setting priorities and sticking to them. That's really what a boundary means. We think of boundaries a lot as like interpersonal dynamics and being, having harsh conversations with other people. It's really about protecting the things that you say you are going to do to protect your energy, to protect your peace, and sticking to that. So it's about making an intentional plan for yourself and staying true to your word.
And that is so important, that the promises that we make to ourselves, at least in my life, as I've done that more and more, I've gained more respect for myself and more of that self love. Whereas when I don't, and obviously we have to forgive ourselves for the times when we don't fulfill a promise. But the more that I've done that, the more I've gained that kind of respect and self love. So, to wrap up this segment, talk a little bit about self love, how important that is in our lives as business owners or in our workplaces. What does self love have to do with combating burnout as well?
This is such an important question. And Janice, I have to tell you, like when I went to treatment in my 20s, we did an affirmation exercise and a self-love exercise. And they went around the circle with a mirror and they held it in front of each person. And when they put that mirror down in front of me and asked me to say nice things to myself, I burst into tears. I couldn't do it. It is so hard sometimes, even though we think we're better at it than we are. When it really comes down to it, this is where the rubber meets the road. You know why? And we think of like self-love as like woo-woo or weak. Self-love and self-compassion isn't lowering the bar. It's actually how you reach it. You don't change your life by being hard on yourself. You change it by learning how to support yourself through the process. Okay. And the power of what I talk about here is so much about choosing a kinder response to yourself, especially in the moments when things don't go perfectly, because they're not always going to go perfectly. It's about learning to ride the wave and be kinder to yourself in those moments. It's easy to beat ourselves up. That's our default, girl. That is our default. But learning how to stand strong, even in the face of challenges, that is the lesson. I'll show you something funny. I have this sitting right here. I have these all over my desk. They're in my car. They're on my desk. This is a little, you probably can't see it, but it's a bright pink card. And I have them all over the place. I'm constantly writing myself love notes. This one, and I just jotted this down. I didn't write this for you. This is just on my desk. This one says, I am focused. I am amazing. I am a baller. I am abundant AF. I wrote that to myself a couple days ago because I felt like I needed it. I just needed a little hype woman pick me up. This is important. This is, by the way, the work. When you hear people talk about like doing the work, this is the work. Sometimes it's as simple as talking to yourself differently so you believe it. Because in those moments where things get tough, believing that about yourself is how you stand up 2 inches taller and make the hard choice, do the hard act as a leader, set the boundary, take the action. That's how it's done.
That's how it's done, everybody. And we will be right back.
We'll be right back with more insight, inspiration, and real conversations. This is Spanish Janice on Now Media Television. And we're back. I'm Janice Burt, and you're watching Spanish Janice. Let's keep growing together.
Welcome back to Spanish Janice with my incredible guest, Jamie Hess. And Jamie, if people are watching this, as I know they are, going, who is this lovely, amazing woman and where can we find her? Can you let everybody know how you can be found?
Absolutely. You can always find me on Instagram. I'm at Jamie Hess. My website is meetjamiehess.com. And of course, I'm a keynote speaker, so you can book me through my website over there. And I'm on LinkedIn and all those fun places. And if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called the Gratitudology Podcast, and it can be found everywhere podcasts are broadcast.
Beautiful. And what a great thing to listen to. You know, it's like the input, what we fill into our little ears and into our heart is how we show up in the world. So to come at it from a place of gratitude and love and peace and joy, it's just all so beautiful. And I want to talk about living our very best life because I am convinced that we are here in these human little meat bodies um, to grow and to truly become the best versions of ourselves possible. So, Jamie, if somebody is really wanting that, has this desire to become the best versions of themselves, but they feel a little overwhelmed or unsure of how to get there, what would you tell that person?
Your best life begins with your next small choice because it is overwhelming otherwise. I mean, most people aren't lost, they're overwhelmed. And I tell people all the time, don't try to design your best life today. Just take one small step that helps you feel better right now. So, one daily habit, one supportive thought, one boundary. But momentum creates clarity, and clarity follows movement. So, you can't think yourself, by the way, the thinking spiral, you can't think yourself into something. It's like the same brain that got me stuck here isn't going to think my way out of it. Action creates the next steps. You got to start taking little actions, and that's what creates that movement. And even repeating, an affirmation like, I don't need it all figured out. I just need my next step can immediately calm the nervous system. Because a lot of people do get overwhelmed by that. Like, well, I don't know how to make redesign my life and make it great. And it's like, you don't have to figure that out today. You just got to take one step in the right direction and then give yourself a little pat on the back for taking the step.
Ooh, that's a really good point, is that cheering yourself on and celebrating those small wins. I mean, that's really huge. I am a very strong proponent of walking through fear because for me, fear was that block, that overwhelming feeling that held me back a lot in life. Talk a little bit about fear in your own life and what were some of the steps that you did every time you felt maybe a little paralyzed or suffocated or trapped by fear? What did you do to walk through that fear and to continue forward despite the fear?
I mean, fear is the this is what I say all the time. Uh, Moving through the fear keeps us stuck. Um, and sometimes it's easier to stay stuck. Like we just stay in that fear. We stay stuck in the muck and the mire because staying stuck feels safe. But starting is how you build the life that you actually want. So starting forces us to face the uncertainty and to face the fear, while staying stuck feels familiar and predictable. So even when something isn't working for us, it can feel safer than the unknown. I coach people that just stay where they are because they're so scared of change. So again, I coach people to use affirmations all the time. Even telling yourself, I can handle the discomfort of starting creates momentum. But walking through that fear and getting to the other side to some change and growth is always better than staying stuck in the middle of it. I always like to tell people I get out of bed the same way that you do: 1 foot, 2 foot, anxiety, right? 3 foot, 4 foot, fear. Like I walk into the bathroom, like, my brain wants to say, I can't. It's too scary. I'm stuck. The difference is I have tools that get me out of it faster. So my point in sharing that is we all feel fear. Like, don't think that other people that seem courageous don't have that. We all have that. It's about how quickly can you move yourself through it? And how much do you believe that if you move through the discomfort of walking through that fear, that how much can you step into the belief that that change on the other side is where you need to be?
So let's take the example of your new keynote coming up that you've been working really hard on.
Yeah.
Talk us through that. Like, so you have this new keynote, you're excited about it, but I can imagine maybe there's still maybe a little bit of fear, trepidation. It's something different. In that example, what have you done or are continuing to do to just continue moving forward despite the fact that it's something new, you've never done it before, the unknown and all of that?
The keynote is such a great example, right? Because you're absolutely right. I've done my other keynotes 150 times. I know them. It would be easy to just keep doing what I know how to do. But I knew there was something bigger. There was a message on my heart that I wanted to share with the world that was different. So, what did I do? I took the small steps by framing it out. I took the bigger step of building it out. And here's where I get to make the big change. I have the choice to show up with being practiced. This is so great. I have a coaching client who is a magician. He is a mentalist. He's a famous mentalist and magician. You may know him. He's part of our keynote speaking group that we were a part of. And he is a mentalist and a magician. And he does that on stage, but he's also a keynote speaker. What he talks about is what makes him so good, what makes any mentalist or magician good is practice, right? And that is something that we all have available to us. We all have the ability to show up as the best, most practiced version of ourselves. And so, what I get to do now, even though it's hard, even though it's daily consistent action, even though it's a lot of work, is I get to take the time between now and January 13th, which is when I'm debuting, I'm giving birth to this new keynote baby to the world. I get to look at the days that I have in between now and then and cherish that time that I have and take that time to take daily consistent actions to make sure that when I step on that stage, I am the absolute best version of myself. Now, I could get stuck in the fear of it because every day that I work on it, to be honest, it's a little scary. I'm not as good at it yet. It's new material. But I know because I've been here before that by showing up and by practicing and by being prepared to give best in class work, that is how I'm going to come out on the other side and make change not so scary. And you know what's cool? It's in my hands. I have the ability to do that. And it's all in the small, consistent action. So instead of being nervous about what's going to happen on the 13th, am I going to forget what I'm talking about? Am I going to look stupid? Are people going to like my topic? I have the choice to make it the best that it can possibly be by showing up every day between now and then. And that is the hallmark of a true leader.
It really is. And doing all that preparation, practicing. So let's say all that goes well. Um, let's not use this as an example because I know you're gonna nail it and it's gonna be amazing. But let's talk about something else where somebody puts in a lot of effort, practices, does the thing, and then shows up and there's a failure or
Mm.
the outcome is not what they expected it to be. How do we pick ourselves up off of the floor when we fail or when something doesn't meet our own, and we're our worst critic a lot of times, our own expectations? Do you have any advice for people when it comes to moving through the fear of failure and just getting back up?
Well, here's the thing. Napoleon Hill says, once you realize that there is no failure, because a failure is just a lesson and it teaches you and it gives you information to be better the next time. And once you really sink into that, your entire life changes because you lose the fear of failing. There is no, if you've prepared and you try and you do your best, but things still don't go right and there's a change to be made and something to learn, all it is more information. The keynote I've been giving for the last 2 years around gratitudology, my pillars, it was the ABCs of gratitudology: ask, become, connect. The ask was about asking yourself, what is the version of myself that I want to bring into the world today? And become is kind of becoming the version, who shows up like that. And then connecting was connecting it back to the world. But in that second pillar and become, a big part of that was becoming somebody who learns to love the parts that suck. And that was my biggest life lesson. When I learned to become somebody who actually loves the parts that suck because they all turn into lessons, my whole life changed. So I'll give you an example. Somebody who wakes up with anxiety, a self-admitted person who wakes up with anxiety, my instinct is to wake up and think, oh man, I have to have a tricky client call today. Say you're in the corporate world. I have to have a tough conversation with my boss today about, money or about asking for a raise. This is so scary. I'm going to think of 900 ways that it could go wrong. The reframe is learning to instead, and you might have that initial thought, but instead say, wait a second. Wow, I get to practice having a big girl conversation today. I get to practice being courageous and confident in my communication skills. I get to model somebody who shows up as, a more brave, more emboldened version of myself. That brings you into that conversation as a completely different person. It brings you into it with intention, with something to learn, with something to glean, with something you get to practice, with a new version of you get to bring to market. And it changes everything about your intention. You start walking into situations inherently with less. I got good at sales. Instead of thinking, I used to go into every sales call thinking, well, what about when they say no? What about when I get, the answer I don't want to hear? What if, the price I'm asking is too much and I don't get what I want? And instead, I started coming to it from a place of gratitude. Wow, I'm so grateful. This person is willing to show up and take this call with me. And I'm so grateful that I get to go into it and practice getting better and better at sales. And I'm so excited to go in as a version that gets to really communicate with this person on the same level and show my value because, I think my value is going to meet his value and we're going to come to terms on this deal. When you go into it with that energy, you are magnetic. And Janice, I've said this before. There's a lot of things in this world I don't do well. Okay. I cannot cook for what. I cannot keep a house plant alive to save my life. Okay. That is just not my core capabilities. But at closing deals, at negotiating, at this, I cannot be beat. I have talked myself into becoming somebody who loves sales. I love getting on sales calls. And by the way, I close those deals 99% of the time. Why? Not because I'm braggadocious or don't have, it's not about ego. It's not about I'm so great. It's about I believe to my core that the end result's going to be awesome. And because I go into it with that enthusiasm, they feel it immediately. And it's a magnetized, charged up version of the conversation where before I went in from a place of lack. This is how we reframe fear.
And I am so grateful for you, Jamie Hess. Everybody stay with us. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more insight, inspiration, and real conversations. This is Spanish Janice on Now Media Television. And we're back. I'm Janice Burt, and you're watching Spanish Janice. Let's keep growing together.
Welcome back to Spanish Janice. Don't miss a second of this show or any of your Now Media TV favorites, streaming live or on demand, wherever and whenever you want. Grab the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and enjoy instant access to our lineup of bilingual programs in both English and Spanish. If you prefer podcasts, listen to Spanish Janice anytime on the Now Media TV website. And we cover everything from business, breaking news, lifestyle, culture, and more. Now Media TV is available 24/7. So the stories that you care about are always within reach. Welcome back to Spanish Janice. We are wrapping up this just amazing conversation with Jamie Hess. And one thing I wanted to touch on, because Jamie is such a PR media expert, I want to talk a little bit about that. So tell us about your PR experience, media experience, what you're doing now in that realm.
I started my career in public relations. So I knew from the moment I was 10 years old, like as soon as I knew kind of what PR was, I was like, that's the job for me. And that's exactly where I went. I was interning for a big PR office, even when I was in college at NYU. And I worked in that field for 17 years. Public relations, when I started, meant a very different thing than what it is now. When I started in the late 90s, early 2000s, PR meant earned media. So getting your clients on television and magazines, newspapers, maybe walking them down red carpets at the buzziest events, that sort of thing. Now it's really become influencer marketing. So very interestingly, it's kind of taken this big shift. I worked in all sorts of realms: entertainment, PR, hospitality. The last 6 years of my career, I ran the book of business on McDonald's. We did all of their celebrity, experiential, and influencer, as well as some other things. But at the end of that career, I became what I call an accidental influencer. I had an Instagram account that took off. At that time, it was called NYC Fit Fam, and it was a health and wellness account. It's now my name, at Jamie Hess. But interestingly, I ended up shifting from inside on the brand side as a corporate girly to kind of being on the other side of things where the PR companies were then reaching out to me and hiring me as an influencer. Where that spit me out at the very end here is I have a coaching course now called Brand Ninja, where I teach other people how to basically do what I did, which was I left my corporate job and 5x my income by becoming a paid content creator by brands. And I knew how to do that so well because I was the one hiring the influencers for a long time, and then I became one.
Ooh, talk to us a little bit about this influencer culture. What does it take to be an influencer in today's day and age? What are the main things?
I don't think people realize because being an influencer has a bad name for good reason. There's plenty of fluffy people out there doing bad work, meaning they're holding up a tube of toothpaste that they never brush their teeth with it. And they're like, buy this toothpaste and it's disingenuous, right? But if you're doing it, I guess, right, I'm putting air quotes, but if you're doing it the right way, you have integrity, you're standing, you're working with brands you believe in that you really use and love. And you're essentially a one woman advertising agency, which is what I have been for the last 6 years as a full-time content creator. You're also you're on sales and marketing team. So I'm a content creator. I am the sales force making all the deals with the brands. I am the one creating the content, doing the contracts, doing all of the parts of the business. So you're essentially a solopreneur. So I think kind of the Kardashian, name of it all kind of gives influencing like this weird fluffy thing. But the reality is that is where consumer spending habits are being influenced, is by influencers on social media. It is where by and large we learn about most products and services is from people on the internet. So it's a very important part of business and commerce, and I really take pride in what I do.
And since you're on social media a lot or see a lot with social media, what's something that you would like to tell the audience that might be surprising to them or just something that's interesting about the world of social media? Because I know a lot of us are entrenched in a new digital era and social media, and when I was a kid that you know didn't exist. I mean, none of this
Sure.
existed. So, how, what is something interesting about social media that you have learned?
I don't think people realize that when you really are working with a brand as a brand ambassador, especially if you're really like deeply baked in with them. Like I have a few annual ambassadorships that I work with Bayer Consumer Health and Boron, which is a homeopathic brand, and a bunch of other brands I work with, on an annual basis. So I'm really kind of baked into their culture. As an example of Boron, I just recently went with them to their headquarters in France. They brought about 10 of us, media and influencers, to go to their headquarters and their factory and their flower fields where they grow all of the products, the flowers that they make into all of these homeopathic products. There have been times when I've done, anything from an hour of educational training with a director of education with a brand to going to their cold storage facility and seeing kind of how the sausage is made, for lack of a better term. A lot of the times we are really, really brought up to speed. If we're going to be speaking on behalf of a brand, the brand wants us to do a good job and wants to imbue us with that information and with a love for that brand. I'm going out to another brand's headquarters in just a couple of months to Now Foods, which is a natural food and supplement brand. So I think people don't realize that. They just think that a lot of this influencing thing is like this fluffy back and forth. But the reality is, we are brought on as trusted advocates for the products that we represent. And it's really cool.
It is really cool. I love that, especially when you can tell that somebody believes in the product and it's not, like you said, a disingenuous thing, but it's like, hey, this product has been amazing for me. It's changed me in these kind of a ways. Now, for a business professional out there who has, let's say, an Instagram account and a Facebook account, maybe a LinkedIn account, what are what's like a tool or a strategy that they can use just when they post things on social media to just heighten or help in their own businesses and careers? What's a specific like tip or trick for them?
Well, similar to what I've been saying throughout this whole interview, which is like consistency is the most important thing. If you're trying to build your social media presence and get your message out, consistency is very important. So, coming up with an editorial calendar and making sure, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, I just hate this social media thing. And by the way, we all do. I mean, there's plenty of days where I get up and I don't feel like posting, even though I'm a content creator for a living, but consistency matters. but then also what you are posting. So you have to think about your end user. A lot of people just post whatever they want to post, whatever's going on with their business, not thinking about how is this really going to land? Is it educational, interesting, funny? How is it going to be received? And am I really creating content that is going to be fun or compelling to consume on the other side of that screen? That's the most important part of your social media strategy. And the last thing I'll say is this. I work with a lot of people as a coach with my Brand Ninja coaching program. A lot of people that take my course don't think of themselves as influencers, or they never thought of themselves as influencers. And what I say to a lot of people is, you may be leaving money on the table. I work with people who are keynote speakers and podcasters and entrepreneurs and coaches and authors. So they don't think of themselves as influencers because that's not their full-time job. But if you have a platform or a POV, there is a good chance that there might be a brand that would want to work with you to help tell their story. And so I encourage people to come check out, go to meetjamiehess.com and click on the part that says coaching and just check out what Brand Ninja is about, because I work with so many professionals that didn't realize that that could be an additional revenue stream for them to help brands amplify their message, on your social media channels. But a lot of the time, like if you're a keynote speaker and you're out there talking to healthcare professionals, there might be an over-the-counter medication brand or some sort of a health brand that might love to be a part of your story, even if you only have 5 or 10,000 followers. So, Brand Ninja is for everyone. And I think in the changing world of social media, influencing is for everyone. If you've ever spoken to an audience on social media and shared a tip or a trick, you have influenced.
Jamie Hess, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, for sharing just your heart, your wisdom, your knowledge with us. I truly am inspired by your story of coming out of addiction, and and just how authentically and I'm making myself cry, genuinely you show up in the world, because that's what we need to see in each other, in one another, is that beautiful humanity, and making the choices, those mindset shifts that have you in the place where you're at right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on. And everybody watching this, just know how valuable you are. And every morning, wake up and just say one thing that you are grateful for. Thank you again, Jamie, and we will see you next time.